fellow Canadians, I have helped to save the world. I have committed Canada to 50% cuts in emissions in the next 20 years. I will be going to Alberta personally next month to close down the tar sands. Oh, by the way, we will also be shipping $15 billion a year each to China and India to help them grow their economies with clean power. And then, only $5 billion to the Brazilians, $3 billion to the South Africans and the Turks and so on. Vote for me. Obama has actually hired, if I had to draw a short list of 6 people I'd like to see hired by the next administration last summer, 6 Americans who really know what's going on and what needs to be done, he hired them all. And there is a possibility, I think, that he may go for the grand gamble of trying to make a U.S.-Chinese two-party deal. U.S. and China together are responsible for 40% of global emissions. It could make a difference. But not just in terms of getting that 40% under control, but this could be and would be intended as the template for the global deal. I mean, trying to do a global deal with 117 countries, which is what's showing up in Copenhagen this December, is intrinsically nonsense. How do you do a deal with 117 sovereign players? Including Saudi Arabia, Australia, even under new management, and our own tar sands guy. But if you could do that two-party deal, you could offer that as a template, asking other industrial countries to take the American side of the deal and accept their terms, and other developing countries to take the Chinese side of the deal and accept their terms. That could be a way of breaking through. I'm not promising this, I'm not even predicting it. But if he's bold enough and understands some of what I think he understands, he can try for that. If we don't get on top of this, and I think it requires pretty heroic measures. And if we don't prevent going past 450 parts per million, we're at risk of going past 2 degrees, and then you're on the escalator heading for 5, and the feedbacks kick in, and there's no way off the escalator. But there is a way of cheating, and that is geoengineering, which was taboo for scientists to talk about even 2 years ago. Now they're starting to talk about geoengineering, and basically these are techniques for holding the global temperature down, even though you have exceeded the amount of carbon dioxide in the air that would normally drive you into additional warming, cause the feedbacks to kick in, cause the runaway warming. So the geoengineering techniques are now being seriously discussed, though nobody is actually testing them yet, and that's what's got to happen. What we've got at the moment is a sort of blogosphere of techniques that might hold the temperature down, but we don't have hard science, in most cases, on whether they work. So we need that, and we need it fast. The one that's actually got the most publicity, came out about 2 years ago, is an idea for creating a kind of sunscreen in the stratosphere, mimicking what volcanoes do. When big volcanoes blow, they blast a lot of sulfur dioxide right up into the stratosphere. The last one that went off was Pinatubo in the early 90s. And for a whole year after Pinatubo blew, the global temperature was 0.5 degree Celsius cooler. So we know it works. We know it doesn't have lethal side effects. We could do that. We don't have to blow up volcanoes. We can just dose aviation fuel with a 0.5% solution of sulfur dioxide and use every transatlantic, transcontinental flight, anything that goes into the stratosphere, There are other alternatives which I find much more attractive. The one I would actually recommend to you, just to have a look at it, because I like it a lot. There's a guy called John Latham. He's a Brit, but he works now for the National Center of Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. His idea is to build a fleet, or several fleets, of relatively small boats, 15 meters of the water line, unmanned, wind-powered, satellite-controlled. And their job would be to sail, staying out of the sea lanes, under that low-lying cloud called stratocumulus cloud that covers about a quarter of the surface of the oceans. Latham's idea is that these ships, boats, whatever, would sail under the cloud and spray up a fine mist of seawater. You don't have to blast it up 100 meters. Get it 10 meters into the air, and convection, turbulence will carry about half of it up into the cloud. And it will stick in the cloud, and it will thicken the cloud, and the cloud will reflect more sunlight. He's run the numbers. It looks like it works. I'd love to see somebody try it for real, because it's a lot less offensive than sulfuric acid in the stratosphere. So, I mean, there are parachutes, there are lifelines, we're not doomed, we're just in trouble. And we've been in trouble before. I mean, this is really frightening, but so was nuclear war. I would have died as a teenager if we had a nuclear war over Cuba. They called me up and sent me to sea. And then in the early 80s, Carl Sagan and a bunch of other people realized that if you had a nuclear war, you'd have a nuclear winter. That the smoke from the burning cities would create a shroud around the planet that would drop the temperature below the survival level for plants for a year. It would be like the death of the dinosaurs when the asteroid hit. I think that what happened between the early 80s and the end of the 80s was driven consciously and unconsciously by a recognition that we are in really serious shit here. We didn't understand. And, you know, we can't go on rolling these dice. I actually came out of this process, learning curve, more optimistic than I started. Because I could see ways through, not just one, several ways through. With a little bit of stick handling, we can make our way through.